Hello, I'm Nathan Norris with the City Building Partnership, and we're here this evening to talk about the South Hill neighborhood and our plans that we've developed over the last couple of days that try to implement the vision that's been set out in the comprehensive plan as well as in the new neighborhood code. I'm going to take you through a presentation, and I sort of want to emphasize up front that we're very eager to receive your questions during this actual presentation on the Zoom chat. We have people who are monitoring the questions that are asked to make sure that we can address whatever concerns you have this evening. This is going to be recorded so that people can also look at it at a later date, but I want to make sure that we do answer your questions tonight if at all possible. We're going to jump into this, and this is what we sometimes refer to as a work in progress presentation, because there's still going to be work that we're going to be doing after we depart Ithaca, including finishing illustrations, updating illustrative plans, updating a regulating plan, et cetera. So we want to go ahead and make sure that you understand we're not at the end of this process at all. And that's why we really encourage you to share your thoughts with us as well as your questions tonight. So let me go ahead and see if I can share my screen. Let's see.
That's great, Nathan.
Right. Okay, thanks, Howard. All right, so I've already said a couple of things about the process. So this is the vision for the South Hill based upon the information we've received and the study that we've done of the site so far. The first thing is really just a big picture issue, and we think this is actually the most important issue. That's why it's at the very front. And that is that when we come across really special opportunities or special situations, they really do deserve special care. This is not an ordinary planning exercise. Okay, it's not ordinary for a variety of reasons that we'll go into, but that's why this deserves the community's special attention as we move forward in this. This is just not a run-of-the-mill thing that we're dealing with. And the most important thing to recognize is that this is a very important location. This is just not another piece of property that happens to fall in this region. It's one of the 3 hills that surround Ithaca, and it's surrounded by an abundant amount of nature. We have Buttermilk Falls State Park, we have the Ithaca College Natural Lands, we have all sorts of wonderful natural sites surrounding this, and this is important for a couple of different reasons. The first thing is that we're looking to create essentially a village center where none exists today. Part of the reason is because a lot of people, when our major employers in this area try to recruit people to move to Ithaca, they have a hard time, many of them have a hard time finding a place to live. And it ends up being a recruitment barrier of sorts, which in turn essentially amounts to an economic development hurdle. Okay, and so that's one of the reasons we want to provide housing. And the question is where should it be provided? And the obvious answer is it should be provided where it's most well suited to fit in without disturbing the nature, because every time we don't accommodate everyone in this specific town, they have to drive from far distances. And that's not environmentally sustainable. It doesn't make sense from from the recruiting perspective. It doesn't make sense from a environmental perspective, et cetera. So we've got to accommodate housing in the places where it makes the most sense to be accommodated. So that's why this is a very important location for us. It's also an important location because we're next to 2 really big employment centers, where it would be best if we don't force people to create traffic by having to drive all the way through a town, and they can actually work in close proximity to where they live. So that's a really important issue. It's another special opportunity because it's not just being next to the employment centers or being on the hill. This is an important crossroads right here where King, a county road, hits Danby, 96B, state road. And so this intersection ends up being this really important crossroads, and this parcel that the parcels that we've been planning are right in the heart of South Hill and right in the heart of where the crossroads are. So this is big because either this can be a huge amenity and asset for the entire area, or it's going to end up being a missed opportunity. So that's why we've taken great care of it. Now, the other reason why this is special is it's not just South Hill. It's not just surrounded by great natural areas, but this is also beautiful land. This is a great opportunity with which, if it's properly properly developed and designed, it's going to be a great asset for generations to come. So, and the other element is that it's actually one of the last large parcels that it is in a completely suitable place for where development should occur, once again, at the crossroads. Now, the other thing that makes this a really special opportunity is the fact that we have town leadership and citizens in this community that have been pushing this idea for a long time. This is not just an idea that popped up over the last few months. This is actually what is set out in the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2014 is a desired location for where development would occur. Since there were so many areas that were designated where we would not want development to occur, this is actually one of the ones where it would be a village center. And then it took several years to go ahead and develop the zoning code that would allow the implementation of a neighborhood like this. And that was adopted just last year. So this is following on all this. And so this is a special opportunity because it's setting out essentially what the town has decided it wants to do. So we should try to make it easier to do what the town has set out to do. Now, the other thing, and this isn't a small thing either, the fact that we have the landowners who are eager to cooperate with the town to design it in a way that makes it the great asset, as opposed to just an asset that benefits the landowners or something like that. This is something that will absolutely benefit surrounding area. We received numerous phone calls and video. We had video conferences with people who were talking about how they wish that they had some of the convenience of a village center on South Hill, as opposed to having to drive several miles further to take care of their daily needs. We also have a special opportunity here because not only do we have the landowner cooperation, but we have the political consensus, as I was referencing before, and that's important. Now, I'm not going to talk about all the things that I spoke about on Monday, which really outlined the principles that were going to guide the design of this area. And so if you want to do that, you can go back and look at it on YouTube just to see the detailed analysis of the different principles. But one of the ones that I did speak about that I think is very much worthy of re-emphasizing is this notion of town and country. Town and country has always been the ideal where people get to live essentially in a village, town, or city and have immediate access to nature. The city of Ithaca is a great example where you can walk through the city and you can experience nature. There's falls, there's hills, there's trees, there's streams, there's canals, there's all of that. And that's a great amenity that a lot of people get to enjoy. We know the most expensive real estate in the United States is where nature greets intense urbanism, whether it's Central Park in Manhattan or whether we go and look at towns that are immediately on coastal areas and the like. Our challenge is that our rules often make designing a town or a village or a city really, really difficult. Okay, so the good news is we've got a zoning code in place, but we may have other hurdles in trying to create this place where we get to experience compact living that helps save nature for our enjoyment and agriculture for our enjoyment. It's hard to get that in close proximity to this nature. So let's go to the next slide. One of the biggest hurdles that we'll be facing is improving Danby and King. Okay, that not only that intersection for about 2 blocks in either direction is what's necessary to have a place that will have this village center character. And when we asked people what they were looking for that might already have a state highway on it, a lot of people said, well, Trumansburg is an okay example for what we're talking about, the scale of what we're talking about. And so here's an image that Dan Tasman took for us yesterday. I said, well, or on Monday, I said, well, we've heard a lot about Trumansburg. Can you go take some photos of this for us? And he went and ran out there before we had the rain on Tuesday and got this image. But I thought this was a great example to show how the cars can slow down while they're in the village. And then after just a couple of blocks, they can speed up and regain their speed. And so that's a really good example. Some other people said, well, you should look at Skaneateles and their village center, and that it's a place there where people not only want to live and work full time, but it's also a place where people want to visit. And that's sort of the thing. We want to create a place that isn't a place that people are driving through. We want to be a place that's worthy of driving to. All right. And so that's the basic big idea for what we want to be able to do. Once again, people are happy here walking next to the streets here in Skaneateles. And so you're going to need 2 things to really push this concept of how you improve those streets forward. Okay, the first thing is, remember we showed the visualization of how to take the image that's in the upper left-hand corner, and we showed a series of 6 different slides where it ended up on the right. These are by Steve Price with Urban Advantage, and it shows how you can take a rather unremarkable place and then transform it into something that's really desirable. And that's what we essentially would be hoping to be able to do on these streets. And ultimately, what that means is showing a visualization that takes it from automobile-dominated environment where cars feel free to go extraordinarily fast, which on Danby, I guess you can go 55 miles an hour legally right now. And nobody wants to be walking next to that right now or taking their baby across the street in a stroller. And so the idea is, once again, just for the 2 blocks, slow down the cars long enough so that people feel comfortable being in that area in an urban village center. Okay. So that's going to be, so you need the visual transformation, the actual computer generated images to help communicate the desired change that you'd like there. The second thing that's necessary is citizen support. Okay, because ultimately changing things at a state level or a county level require different decision makers. And it's really important for decision makers to hear from the citizens as well as the town that this isn't just something that a few people want, but it's something that the entire town really wants. And so that citizen support's necessary. This is actually an image that I talked about on Monday, which is in Logan, Utah, where I went there one time and everybody was complaining about the Department of Transportation because they had put, made their main street essentially a highway where they slowed the traffic down to 35, which is still too fast for people to feel comfortable walking around. And they wanted to get it down to 25 or less. And they said, well, we just can't do it. I said, well, are you sure? Because when I saw the temple that they built in Logan, Utah, by a bunch of people 100 years before who had almost no money, that didn't stop them from building something that still was the most beloved place in the entire region. I said, surely, given what your forefathers had done, you can figure out a way to show how much you care about your downtown to the DOT and find a way to work with them on improving that thoroughfare so that it matches the context where it's going through. So I think those are the really 2 important things to consider as you seek to improve both Danby and King. Now, one of the things that was mentioned is we tried to find examples in the state where some interesting transformations occurred and how they designed a road. And we had a friend of ours who's we've worked with in the past, Dan Burden. He actually helped them. It had to be 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago in the city of Hamburg. And he helped them just put in a couple of roundabouts that helped smooth traffic around their village center. And what's amazing is when we went to research what's going on in Hamburg today, we found their website, and their actual homepage of their website talked about, had this quote from Dan Burden on their community site that talked about how wonderful this transformation was, that all had to do with improving one of their roads. That before everybody said, no, you can't do it. And now it's been a huge success. So that might be one of the success stories. You can continue to look to others, but it's very important to make it easy for these people to make the right decisions by having the clear vision, by showing the citizen support, and then by making a logical argument about places that have already done this or older places that are currently existing that are doing the same thing that you want to be able to do in this village center. Because the fascinating thing is that it's the town of Ithaca, and it doesn't seem as though there's a village center anywhere in the town. And this would put the there, and that's why I'm sort of adamant that I think this is just a special opportunity to take advantage of all this. So that's the preface. What we want to be able to talk now about is the plan, which is what a lot of people are here this evening to talk about. And we tried to create a plan that essentially did 6 different things. And Jeff Dyer, who is the lead designer on this plan, is going to interrupt me as soon as I get astray or don't explain some of the details very well. But these 6 concepts, I'm just going to give you sort of a quick overview, because my expectation is people are going to have questions that you put in the chat that we're going to be able to respond in further depth, but we didn't want this presentation to go on too long.
Hey, Nathan, can I interrupt you real quick? This is Jeff Dyer. I'm the lead designer on the project. I just want to mention, as you all are aware, this is always a challenge, getting the technology right. And we have a couple platforms we're working on tonight. We have a YouTube channel that many of you may be listening in on. And there's also a Zoom meeting. And if you'd like to interact with us, you can go to the city's website, and there is a Zoom link. And if you get on that, you would be able to put questions in the chat box. And so there's still time to do that if you'd like. We're gonna walk through the plan. Nathan's gonna walk through these 6 concepts. But when, as you're sitting there, if you can maybe open your browser and go to the town, it should be pretty quick, and that way you can actually interact with us. And I also want to say, thank you to Nathan's been, the sort of the face of this project. He's had to do a lot of meetings, lots of talking. I think his voice is hoarse by now, but he's really been doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the talking side. So Howard is also joining us as a co-host. Howard is so Nathan's role was really on the strategic side of understanding how to bring a T&D to the town. Howard is here. He's a talented designer, but he's also here to help us on the code and help us understand how to actually translate this into rules. And then I'm here as a lead designer to do the vision. So Howard will also be with us, and he can interrupt as needed, but he's also manning the chat. So when you guys put in questions on the chat, he can either answer you directly or he'll throw it back out to us.
Hey,
so with that,
Jeff, good job, because we're getting more people coming into the YouTube. So maybe just give it a second for people to find the link.
Okay, and there is a 10-second delay on the YouTube, so you guys are going to want to turn your YouTube off once you're back into this meeting. The YouTube is where this recording will be stored, and so the Zoom is not going to be. It's complicated, but the YouTube will be there for reference, just like Nathan's Monday evening discussion. So this will be it'll be a record, but we just decided that this is a better ways that we can actually get your be more interactive, so we're not just talking to a screen.
All right, thank you very much, Jeff, and I'm glad to see that others are joining us on the Zoom. I'll go ahead and continue talking about this. So these are this is the illustrative plan on the right. Just to orient you, this is actually not, usually you have the top of the page facing north. In this case, it's actually facing east, because it's essentially going up South Hill on King. That's where the street that's going up and down vertically. The one that's going horizontally is actually Danby, the state highway, To the left takes you down to the city of Ithaca, and to the right takes you out. So you've got Buttermilk Park or Buttermilk Falls Park down to the bottom of this. So that's the orientation. And Jeff's going to take you through a lot of the details. I want to give you a quick overview of these 6 principles that essentially were the key things that we were trying to achieve with this plan. Because every plan is a compromise between different, it's always a compromise between different principles, but this is what was driving it. The most important thing were those concepts I talked about on Monday evening about what makes a walkable community, as opposed to one where you'd have to drive to get around for everything. To get a walkable community, you need roads that essentially allow the cars to go slower so that people feel safe. And you have to have a variety of housing types. You have to have a variety of uses. You want to create streetscapes that feel like outdoor rooms that are really charming that people want to be in. You have to create safe environment and entertaining one. All those different elements I talked about Monday. But that's at the heart of this is a walkable community. If you work at IC, you will be able to walk or bike to IC. If you work at the business center down the road, you should be able to get there without necessarily having to get in the car. So that's at the heart of all this, is making it walkable. The second thing that's really important is we have to remember that we're on a large mountain, essentially, and the water is flowing down. So in order to deal with times like on Tuesday, when there was lots of water running through this area, we had to make it drainable. And so that means that we had to add additional stormwater retention areas. Now, our idea when we do those is to make them almost an amenity that are built into the plan, as well as we paid particular attention to the contours of the land so that there's natural drainage areas. And then finally, we went ahead and connected the drainage patterns to the area south of the parcel that you're seeing here, because it's not as though it just stops at the property line. It's going someplace else, and we've got to make sure that that's done well. So it's drainable. The third thing that was important to us is that it was growable or growable. It was essentially what we usually refer to as incremental in nature. It's something that while we'll show you a base illustration that sort of shows you what we call the climax condition. That's the condition where it's fully built out. The question is how can we allow this to grow incrementally? It starts small and then becomes something more. And it's not just about phasing about where the first phase is, but for example, in the village center area, we might have buildings just like our ancestors had in all of our cities and all of our towns that started off very modestly and then got replaced over time with more intense buildings, or taller buildings or bigger buildings and the like. And that's what we have factored into this plan. And Jeff's going to take you through some of the details of that in just a moment. The other thing that's really important on this plan was to have a flexible plan. And in this case, that means that when we have the small blocks that we've essentially created in this design, it allows us to change the building type, lot sizes, even the uses differently as the property gets developed. And that way it remains very flexible in order to provide changing needs. Over time, things change, and we wanted to build in the ability for this to change over that time. I think that's really important, and we may reference that a little more as we go through the plan in greater detail. Attainable is another way of saying we need a place that actually is attainable for people of certain financial means. And that is to say that right now we have a lot of people who want to work where we live here in Ithaca who can't afford the type of living arrangement that they want. And so we've paid a lot of attention to different building types that allow people to live in a smaller amount of space in exchange for having more amenities outside of their dwelling that are, make it worth living. For example, as I said on Monday night, I might have a friend in Paris that only has an 800 square foot apartment, but that doesn't bother me because we're spending all our time outdoors in other places. We have, whether it's the cafe or the restaurant or the cinema or the gym or whatever it may be, a lot of our amenities are in close proximity to us, but not exactly on our lot or in our dwelling. A classic example is the fact that people say, well, these might be small lots. Well, usually you need a big yard for children to play. Well, not if the big yard can be replaced by a big park that's within a short distance of the dwelling. And that's exactly what the new neighborhood code here in the town of Ithaca provides, is the necessity of parks within a certain distance of all the lots. So that's an important element. There's other ways to get attainable housing beyond just providing smaller areas, such as dealing with land trusts, even dealing with large institutional employers who might like permanent affordability built in, where they might have certain houses that can be leased out to new incoming people. So there's lots of different ways that you can skin that cat on that front. The final thing that was important to us is this principle of connecting the surrounding properties. And one of the great examples of how that's done is where we've given the opportunity in the future to connect to IC. And that becomes important when you recognize, for example, right now we see the apartments that are immediately adjacent. They're on the circle apartments at the college. And the college may not want to connect to the neighborhood, and the neighborhood may not want to connect to the college right now. But what happens in 30 years or 50 years? Well, guess what? The roads are rarely ever changed in the future. Once you put down the road, then there's an ownership pattern that prevents things from easily changing as far as it relates to block structure and the like. So what we have done is we've gone ahead and suggested where connections can occur in the future. And when they occur in the future, there might be a time when those apartments get replaced by something else. They actually get torn down 50 years from now. And these connections, they're clearly going to be wanting to connect to where the village center is for this area of town. So that's an important element, is the connectability to all the surrounding properties. So even where you see a connection, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a street there today, but there's a street that can be opened up in the future if the circumstances are right for that. So that's the basic thing. Jeff, do you want to sort of take tell me?
Yeah, it sounds like Nathan, I think you need a break. So let's mix things up here. I know Howard is busy behind the scenes, but Howard, you can jump into if you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a risk.
Are there any questions we need to answer right now, Howard? Or are we good?
Well,
Nathan, I'm sorry, Jeff, what were you going to say when Nathan asked this question?
No, I've been kind of looking at some of the questions, so I can actually, I don't think there's going to be anything that's an emergency. Let me walk through the concept. Yes. And then we'll have a conversation and we can get some of those questions more directly.
Yeah, we're getting general questions about traffic and getting general questions about student housing and things of that nature. And I think getting through the plan will help solve some of those.
Agreed. Okay, so I'm going to take a risk here. And I'm going to share my screen and see if this all works out. So I'm switching because I want to draw over the plan a little bit and give you an idea of yes. Okay. Now, can you guys see my screen now, Howard or Nathan?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's start here. This is the neighborhood plan, and I do want to point a few things out. And so luckily this is recorded, so I'm not going to try to, in the interest of time, I'm not going to dwell on any one thing too much, but I am going to walk through a few of the principles that we're dealing with here. Okay, so the first one is every T&D, every great neighbor, that's traditional neighborhood development. It's a neighborhood. Every great neighborhood has a center. So for this neighborhood, here's kind of your neighborhood, your central neighborhood area. And what we've done is we started to create kind of a center. The other thing that we've done as part of that center is we've connected it as part of a greenway through the plan. Okay. The second thing you do with the neighborhood center is you connect it. This is the connectable that connect-able that Nathan was talking about, but you create connections through the plan to that center. Okay. In this case, it's a little bit indirect at the town center, sorry, at the village center. But that brings us to the next thing, that while there's a neighborhood center, there's also really a village center, and the village center serves the broader community. So it is sort of the commercial and social heart of a village, but it serves a broader area. So those are just some basic structure elements. I know there were some questions about the traffic network, and what you're seeing here is a connected system of blocks. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to have multiple direct connections to destinations without having to have just a big collector road or an arterial road, or forcing somebody that wants to go to the village center to have to come out onto one of these roads and add the traffic to it. So we're giving folks who live in here the ability to get to their destinations more directly by car, but even better, they can walk there, and they can or they can bike there, or get there by other means safely and internal to the neighborhood. The other thing that we've done, I know that this is a project that has seen a few efforts over the years, and one of the things that we kind of made a deep dive to really understand what's going on with the topography and in the surrounding area. And so what we did is we looked at working with the topography a little bit more. So working with those contour lines, you can see the contour lines in here. So we've taken those into account and have used that as a basis for our plan. Other elements that we're looking at in the landscape. Now we are aware that there's a few lines that have been drawn through this area. There is some environmental sensitivity, and there is I believe it's a unique natural area, but there are some this is near some sensitive natural areas, and there's a question about to what degree does that go into this neighborhood area, and those questions haven't been answered yet. And so we don't know if preserving a park like this is enough. What we've proposed here is a lower density housing form that allow, and working with the contours, we can preserve some of the trees, but there's still a question mark that needs to be answered here. And so until we really know where we need to draw the line, and what the policies are in terms of developing in this area, this is kind of this is a placeholder. So this is from what we know today. We believe that this is one potential scenario, but we need more questions answered there. So I do want to make sure everyone understands that. The other thing is that we've got these kind of greenway connection corridors that move through the plan. They do a couple of things. They move water. Or they can help to move water. They also open up into the view shed. So they give everybody, even if you have a house up here, it gives you the ability to have that view. And then it also puts in a public space that allows everybody to enjoy those view sheds. Some of the connections that Nathan was talking about earlier is we've built some of those in. You're seeing with the student housing, there are a few connection opportunities. I might make this a little thicker because I'm not sure if it's coming through. Okay, there's a couple connection opportunities. One is here. It may just be pedestrian. It could be vehicular. Those are questions that I think will need to be answered in time. And there's a second one here. And then there's of course some opportunity for other pedestrian connections through the plan. And so what we're trying to do with that is that as a village center, a robust village center that is well loved and is environmentally sensitive and all those other goals that Nathan was talking about, it needs to have a variety of people, and it needs to have a diversity of people, and that's a diversity across the board's income, what they do for a living. And so just having just students or just graduate students or whatever, what we want to have is a mix of residents and people who come to use this place. So that's a central principle here. And so of course connecting to the student population so that they don't have to get in their car and come out on an already dangerously fast highway because they want to go get coffee at a shop on the corner here. We want to give them the ability to actually get on their bike or walk and find another way in, or perhaps they work at the restaurant or the little shop in our village center. So we want to give those options to all the folks around that they can get here in a different way. And it is worth noting that this is the perfect spot for the bus stop. Put it right in the village, in our village center, and that creates great access to some of our highest, the most dense population. That it is also worth noting that in terms of intensity, there is a gradient. We would like to see the most intensity happen right at this corner here. So you're seeing some of the density illustrated, and of course expanding some of the apartments and possibly other housing options over here. But as you work up the hill, the density drops off. Okay, so you have some of the lower density, the lowest density up here, depending on how that gets developed out, and then you might have a little bit of a cluster, some more activity here as you get by some of the student housing here. But the intent is to have this sort of at a medium density.
Now, Jeff, can I interrupt real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to add to, the phrase might be misinterpreted when you say, well, we'd like to have the intensity down on the corner. That's where the intensity wants to be. If you go to any city, if you go to any town, if you go to any village, they play that where it naturally occurs. The most organic place for it to occur is at the crossroads. And the reason is because that's how you support the amenities of the convenience of the shops and the other places you can experience right at the crossroads. So that's why it's located there. It would make no sense to put it up at the top of the hill away from everybody. Makes sense to put it right there where where everything's coming together.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, Dave.
There's a few other things going on. I know that there's one major landowner here, and that actually makes, in some respects, that makes it easier to really set the pattern and to start that sort of the primary part of the village center and the neighborhood. But we have a whole bunch of other properties that are also involved with this. And there's a lot of folks that, are happily living in their single family houses that exist in the plan area. And so this in no way suggests that any of these folks need to do anything different than what they're doing today, or that something is going to happen to their property. Certainly things are going to change, nearby. But one of the things that we need to do in terms of looking at this in the future is to start to understand what they could be in the what these places could be in the future. So again, it's not to say that we're all like this is the hotel that exists today. In 20, 30 years, they may choose to tear that down and build something that's up on the street and do something different. So we're showing this as in a conceptual way to help guide us to what kind of zoning we would village zoning we would want to put on these lands. Again, the hotel is doesn't have to do anything different than what it's doing today, but it's our responsibility to be proactive in looking into the future rather than reactive. And so we're starting to put that vision down as part of this exercise. So you're starting to see, possibly some dash streets, maybe in sometime down the road, if some of these properties get purchased, we know what the vision for the village is, and that could help guide the redevelopment of these parcels. But again, if somebody owns this parcel for 100 years and doesn't want to do anything different than they're doing today, then it's going to stay what it is today. So again, it's being proactive and understanding what is possible and putting those rules in place. And so there are a number of areas where, again, the existing buildings are today, but then there are definitely parcels where we can start to see where the code, your neighborhood code, could guide the vision for how those parcels might develop over time, and how places that don't today meet the future vision can transition into something different. Getting a little bit closer now, there's a few things going on in this drawing. So what this is, and it's worth mentioning that our real purpose here is to be looking at how to create a regulating plan, in other words, a zoning plan, to implement the vision for a village center. In order to do that, we need to go into detail, and this kind of detail, and conceptually understand what is possible, make sure that we're actually creating the right amounts of certain things, that the buildings can actually fit in there, and that it can actually work. When it comes time to implement these, the landowner would be looking at how to subdivide the area as per the code, as per the plan, and then and as lots are developed by folks who buy them, they would then be following the village rules, so that we actually get the result that we want in terms of the village center. And so again, this is kind of proof of concept, and it's what we then back out of to understand what the rules are. A few things that are happening here. In the past, there was a square that was proposed here, so we did take that idea. We made it a little bit smaller. I think the past proposals have been a little bit larger. We wanted to really right size it. We want it to be too big and feel like a place where if there's just one person in there, it feels like it's empty. We want a place that's really right size, and we often talk about this idea of creating an outdoor room. So when you go to these squares, have you created this sense of an outdoor room? And this is where you have you can have events, you can have passive recreation, you could have this is a concert stage here, and of course the bus stop. So this is your center, your social center for the village. And then fronting and surrounding that would be buildings of probably 1 to 4 stories, preferably mixed use. So you get some residents that look onto the area, and you get some businesses on the bottom. Not a lot of retail would happen in here, but certainly there's enough that would be at that village scale. So we're not doing it downtown, we're doing a village. And so that's what you're starting to get in here. The other things that you're seeing is that this is changing the context of what's going on here. And so you have the highway that runs through right now at 55. You've got a county road that runs through here at various speeds, and part of those speeds goes right next to a Montessori school. So they slow down and then they speed up. I think it's 45 miles per hour, and you have 55 miles per hour here. Those streets are designed for the context that they have today. When we were touring it on this site, we took our lives in our own hands crossing the streets because the cars were moving fast. What we need to propose as a community and as part of our vision is how to slow those roads down so that they match the context, so they're more village-like. And so what you're starting to see here is the introduction of sidewalks. You're seeing potentially on-street parking, which is good for the shops, just like in a village setting. And you're seeing some street trees. So we make it comfortable to walk, and we make it beautiful like a village. Okay, so those are some of the ideas that we're putting in here, and what that'll help us do is slow down the traffic, and it'll help us put the school that exists today in a better context with the surrounding neighborhood and with the streets, the abutting streets. There is also another big proposal here. It's going to be a harder challenge, but is going to be essential to this. And that is slowing this highway down to preferably 25 miles per hour. But we need to make it more safe to cross. We need to make it feel like it's in a village. And just as you travel around the region, you go on streets that are 55 and you enter a village or a town, the speed drops. And then as you leave, it goes back up. And Nathan gave you a few examples of where that's possible. We need to make that possible for this area. So this is an extreme version where I'm actually showing some on-street parking. You still have 3 lanes, so you get the turn lanes. But you have on-street parking that then allows buildings to come up to the street. This is an existing cafe here, but it allows these buildings now to be built on the street because they get their parking on street, and now you're creating that village character. Another thing that we did here, and this was inspired by some of the previous work, was that there is this axis that comes off of the village center. And so what we wanted to do is as we kind of go up the hill here, then we start to move with the contours. But what this allows us to do is to actually shape another outdoor room. And so one of the things that we're able to do is this becomes almost like a showcase kind of a street, but it would be tree lined, very narrow. And as you look up to the end of the street, you are greeted by a public building. We propose that this could be like a public arts building, you know, artisanal studio, or have a gallery component or something like that, in a very intimate kind of a smaller square in here, surrounded by residential uses. And it could have a little green, and so it creates kind of a unique feature in the neighborhood. And then as you look back towards the village center, you get that head-on view of the performance stage in the square. So this becomes a great little kind of neighborhood connector that goes through the neighborhood, through the village center. Okay, so what am I missing here? So we have there have been past plans and some work done on a crescent that comes through, so we've retained that. We've started to look at what are some opportunities in some of these nearby parcels. Maybe you keep the furniture store. Maybe they add on a showroom component. Now that they have on-street parking, they can do something different with their parking that's more in tune with a village setting. We look at some of the geometries of the roads around here to make sure that that the cars are slowing to make turns. And we're also handling much of our parking on street. So you're seeing in the village center, you're seeing some angle parking, not too much of that, but that helps our shops, especially maybe in the first phase, happen. And then you have the other buildings that could come on over time. And so one of the things we're going to illustrate. So I'm going to switch back over to Nathan, and he is going to he'll be able to go through a few slides that kind of show how this changes over time. Because what you're seeing here is what it could look like in maybe 20, 30 years, depending on how it builds out. This is the ultimate condition. It's not going to all of a sudden happen like this. It's going to happen slowly over time. There will be adjustments to the plan, and things will change. So let's take a look at how things might look over time.
Okay, Jeff, just hold on a minute. Let's see. Try this again. Okay, Jeff, can you see that?
Yep, you're on.
Okay, so we've walked through that. Jeff, you want to narrate as I go through these?
So this is what you're seeing here is those buildings I circled. Day one, we do need a full village to really get the kind of retail you want to see here. But early on there might be an opportunity to do that. So this is how you bring on a part of the site. You have the pattern there in black and white, but you're seeing how you could incrementally start to that village character, maybe get the public square installed. You may not have the stage day one, maybe it's just a grassed area, but you're starting to set the tone for the village center, which will allow us on the budding roads to start that process that may take some time to slow the traffic and get that in tune with the village. You're also seeing a couple of other housing types here in red. These are small cottages. There's a group of them around the existing. There's an apartment, a house that's been converted into apartments. You could put some small cottages around there. We could do a smaller multi-unit building, maybe 4 to 6 units on the corner, and then you're seeing a number of cottages surrounded by a green on the left side there. So all those buildings that are colored in could be early phases as they work towards the vision for the area. Let's go to the next one. And so as we go over now, what we want a variety of opportunities. So you have small cottages, you might have small multi-unit buildings, you may have live work units. So you're starting to see some of those up on the street. But in this image, in an early phase, you're seeing 5 or 6 different living arrangements that could attract some students, but they could also attract professors. They could attract people who work in those shops. They could attract a wide variety of potential residents to start populating the village. Next. So now you're starting to see a little bit more filled in, and this is all hypothetical. It's just giving you a sense of how things could change over time. But you may bring on some some single family houses up there on the north, and we start to interface with the existing pond, which I didn't bring up there. We did look very closely at this idea of moving water and the additional needs for handling stormwater. So we added a pond on the bottom left there, but all of those things are just like on the environmental side. We're going to need a few more questions answered before we can really get those right sized. And so again, over time now, see what we're doing is we're starting to build out that spine between the two public spaces. And so you're seeing the completion of these sort of these outdoor rooms that really can start to set the tone and bring the character of the vision into reality. And so now you're starting to see more infill occurring. Okay, next. Okay, so and then again, this is sort of what it could look like in the future. This is the ultimate potential look of the village. So this is, I believe the village zoning allows you up to 4 stories. We kind of hit a middle ground here. Kind of a quick sketch. We're gonna use this as just a way to kind of visualize. It's similar to what's been done in the past. It's just matching kind of where the evolution of the plan has gone. But you see the performance stage there. You see some of the cars parked and some of the mixed use buildings that are in. But again, our task here has been is really to get into the regulations, or sorry, into the regulating plan, which is the zoning. So this is kind of proof of concept. I do want to bring up on the issue of the stories. The neighborhood code that's in place is organized to help guide us to where these different things go. You wouldn't want 4-story buildings in the upper part of this plan or far away from the center. Where we want them is closer to that intersection to create the activity and the vibrancy of that corner to help slow down. The taller buildings will actually help slow down the vehicles. It's not in a downtown. It's not like the city. It's not a city height. It is a village. It's a village character, and it is born out of looking at some of the great villages and towns that are around the region. And then as you go away from that, the zoning then transitions into lower stories. So again, that's your most intense. That is a village scale.
Jeff, I'll show the regulating plan for you so you can explain that.
Yeah. Okay. So this is sketchy. Because this is really where we're going to start to really, dig into how the code can implement our vision and really understand that we need to right size all of these zones, and we need to make sure we have the right things in the right place. So the neighborhood, the NT4 zone is sort of the fabric of the neighborhood. And so you're seeing a lot of that. That's in the purple. And that gives you anything from cottages and single family houses to townhouses and even small multi-unit buildings. And then as you go to the north side of the plan, you see that sort of environmental area that needs more study, but you're also seeing some NT3, that's single family, that's low density, and that's how we're kind of interfacing with those areas on the north. And then the NT5, that is our village center, is you see how it's not very much of it, because we don't necessarily want, it's a village scale, it's not a downtown. And so we want to get the right amount, make sure the buildings work, make sure it brings the right things to the center, but then don't do too much of it. We need to transition into that sort of neighborhood fabric in other places.
Yeah, Jeff, wasn't that the minimum required pursuant to the code?
Yeah, there is a minimum. When you do a village center T&D, there is a requirement to have a certain amount of activity and to really establish that that is part. Because again, this is not only an amenity for this neighborhood. It is for the broader area. So there's a need to right size it, but this is a minimum, and then there's also a maximum. So we're within that zone. But again, this is going to be refined. You're seeing on the right side some proposed future NT5. That is to say, if somebody does buy those properties and wants to pursue a rezoning to a higher level, does that match the vision? This could be a guide for that, but meanwhile, we would be zoning those for the NT4, which is more residential. So a lot of the existing residential in this area that are privately owned are going to be residentially zoned. So again, not putting them out of conformity.
All right. That's the overview. And I wanted to ask Howard, do we have some questions that we need to respond to right now that you've seen on the chat?
Well, just because it keeps me from typing them, we did study on 96B, and the capacity for the traffic is actually quite low for the facility. Its issue is, as pointed out, is that you're sending a very few cars at a very high speed into a stop, a half a mile or a mile down the road. It's not that the road can't handle the capacity, it's that it's being used at a very, very high rate of speed, and that's creating the traffic congestion at the intersections. So managing the speed in a town center where you could slow down, you add more cars can move slowly, and then you feed them into the intersections at a more manageable rate down the road is the idea of what this does. We understand that traffic is dangerous, and that we believe managing speed is the better way to go for that. The other several other questions are about capacity of utilities and schools. Yes.
Can I just say real quick about that speed issue?
Yes, please.
One of the things that the town might want to do is actually do the math on how much extra time there is when you go from 55 to 25 for 2 blocks. Ends up being negligible. So it really doesn't change the quote unquote congestion. It just requires people to slow down for a few more seconds. It's not minutes. It's
right.
Literally seconds that changes things.
And this highway is the least trafficked highway of the highways to the south and to the north. Otherwise, issues of capacity, I highly recommend that the people listening and asking questions go online and find the Town of Ithaca's comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is where this project came from. It implements that larger plan, and the studies were done and can show you the ability of handling the capacity or just how much capacity is available to the town for future growth beyond even this project, and how the town is planning for growth and the patterns that are trying to change from more of the, and instead of letting more and more housing go out further and further away and shooting traffic in, and shooting traffic into your town and your city, allow for these town extensions to manage that growth so that the growth is an amenity, or the growth is a positive thing and not just more and more of the regular thing pattern. So that seems to be most of the questions, and I appreciate everyone asking questions. Please keep pinging them. It's not about speed, it's about volume. Yeah, the volumes, Callie, are very low on the road segments. We have the studies and we can show you that. It's the speed that makes the capacity seem dangerous and or congested at intersections, because the cars stopping don't leave as quickly as the cars that are shooting in at high speed.
The other issue was the backup at the school. That was brought up, and I don't know, it'd be helpful if the person let us know if they're talking about the Montessori School on King, or are they talking about IC?
Oh, I can answer that. Sorry, no, I'm actually, I can't answer exactly what you're saying, but I do want to, I forgot to mention something on the plan. We had great conversations with the Montessori School, and we've heard some of their issues. We have put in a proposal, and you just can't see it on there, of understanding how to better queue the cars so that they're not backing up onto the roadway. And so you have an opportunity to fix that road and to change it. I've shown you where there's street trees, sidewalks, and on-street parking. In the area by the Montessori, you may look at a queuing lane, and overall, I think that their circulation will be improved. So that is in the works as part of our proposal.
Yeah, the comments are that South Hill Elementary School and a combination, and that traffic's at a standstill, and we understand that the roads are an issue, are the biggest issue, and that modifying and creating a better thoroughfare system network, which gives you the ability to have different pathway connections rather than everybody going to the same intersection, is what we are proposing. So please, the idea that we're going to magically solve the traffic problems isn't what we're proposing. We want to manage your traffic problems so that they're less dangerous and they're more connected to where you're trying to go, rather than trying to congest one place.
Right. I did answer a question on who profits on this, and profit comes in a lot of different ways. You have to look at it the other way. If this was a big shopping center, like a big movie theater, and then like a gated community in an apartment complex, think about those things, right? That is possible to develop on the site if you didn't have a vision. And what those things do is they create traffic and give you no benefit, right? You're not creating a great place. You're not creating, you're just creating an apartment complex and a shopping center and a gated, community. What this is it's the win-win. You're actually building community. You're building a place that can have value, that increases in value, and like with traffic, you're giving different routes, different ways to get there, different ways to get through there, and it is a means to manage the traffic. Because as we know, change is change is certain to come. We need to be proactive in what the vision for a place like this is, and really capture the opportunity. And that is a way of profiting for all of us.
I will just say, Callie, say you're still using slowing traffic as a rationale. Yes, that and connectivity. It is part of the rationale.
All right, well,
Seems to be
we
it.
appreciate all these comments. We apologize for the awkward nature of how this works. Normally, under normal times, we would all be together, or we'd have an easy way to be able to answer your questions more directly and have a conversation between the two of us, or the many of us, excuse me. But we appreciate it. You can still get in touch with the planning department here and forward your comments to them. We're going to continue to work with them and communicate with them, and hopefully continue to receive the different questions and issues that will make the next iteration of the plan more responsive to the concerns, or to clarify why things have been done a certain way. Anything else, Howard or Jeff?
I would just like to say thank you all for being here. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for spending the time. And this is the beginning. We're looking forward to seeing you down the road.
That's a good point. We still have more work to do. We have a good sense of where we're going with this, and there's still going to be we're going to work with the town. It's going to be an iterative process. We're going to be working collaboratively, and we want to get this right. And so that's what's happening next.
Please look in the chat right now. There is contact information that, did it go away? No, there it is.
No.
Dave Tasman from the planning department put his contact information in there. Please find it.
Brother Dan. So it's D Tasman. There you can see town.ithaca.nu.us. All right. Anything else, Howard? NY. Yeah, not NJ. All right. Well, thanks everybody for your attention. I know your time's valuable, especially on a Wednesday night. So we look forward to working with everybody in the future.
Thank you.